know why? Because it's NH Unscripted. I am your Jay and the Americans Like host, Ray Dudley. We are coming to you from the YMCA-like digs of the WKXL studios in Concord. Break out those Sony Walkman. Look at that thing. Take the tape out of it and look at the radio bands. You can find us at 1450 on the AM band, 103.9 on the FM band. Those are Concord-based, 101.9 for the beautiful people in Manchester. And yeah, we have a URL. Yeah, we're all grown up now. NHTalkRadio.com is our URL. I'll chat a little bit more about that later in the episode. Right now, I need to thank my sponsor, Lakes Region Fence up in Guilford. Oh, man, I love those guys. I really do appreciate everything they do for us here. It is almost Mother's Day, which means it's almost time for it to jump into the pool. That means summer's almost here. Think of the hero you can be when you drag your significant other out onto the back porch and show them that beautiful new fence that you just spent all of your money on. Hours and hours of fun just going back and forth. Oh, yes, I'm dreaming of it right now. Anyway, lrfence.com is the URL for Lakes Region Fence. You can go out there, click the button, get a free estimate. I've told you before, I'm old, free. I like free and coupons, baby. I love it. lrfence.com, they have everything out there. They do pools, they do property lines, they'll do pickleball courts. You name it, they do it. Lakes Region Fence, lrfence.com. Head out there, lrfence.com. Love those guys. In the studio, finally, with me. I've been after him for months. But he's up there close to the Canadian border, so what can I say? I can't put that much pressure on him. Andrew Lidestri from Theater Up. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you are so... listen, you're doing me a favor. You are doing... I told you earlier, pre-show... I had no idea how far Littleton was. None whatsoever. I do theater up in Lincoln, and I'm thinking, well, you know, how many towns can there be after Lincoln? I mean, goodness gracious. So I go up to see Blythe Spirit, and Mother of God, I thought I was going to need a passport if I had to go much further. You folks are up there.
We are. I mean, it is still an hour from Canada, so I mean, we don't want people to think we're right at the border.
No, dude, you fall out of your car, you're almost in Canada up there.
It's true. No, it's actually really interesting to do theater where we are because we are involved with the New Hampshire Theater Alliance, which is a great organization that connects theaters all around the state.
Right.
And it does an adjudication process and it offers awards once a year. And when I started working with Theater Up, back then we were the Upstage Players, it's interesting to see how much there is this wonderful theater family sort of south of the mountain, south of the Notch, because everybody's theater is close to each other and they all work together, all doing different shows that they're doing. Things do get more sparse the further north you get. Huh. And so for us on the other side of the Notch, there's a small handful of theaters, I think, where we are. And there is a lot of wonderful theater going on in schools, and the arts, I think, are becoming really much more vibrant where we are. I think about 10 years ago when I moved to the area, I would have said to anybody that it feels like these are very much like school sports communities.
Yeah. And
now you're seeing more and more of these kids that are coming out to be involved in the arts with us, and it's been great.
It was such a beautiful community. Is such a beautiful community. I was ignorant. I am ignorant, and I drove up there. I had no idea what to expect. I mean, you're just north, and you know, you're driving, and it's a beautiful drive. It's well worth the time to go out just for the drive alone. And when I pulled into the town, I'm like, oh, this place is vibrant.
Yeah.
It was alive. It was a Sunday afternoon. I went to the matinee.
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy Toledo. It was like this hidden kind of upscale community kind of thing.
Yeah, Littleton's had a great revitalization in the last, I want to say, maybe 6 or 7 years. I think a lot of small towns in America, at some point in time, when they figure out that if they throw a brewery in the middle of the town, that there ends up being sort of an influx. And so when Schilling's opened and then built quite a large brewery right on the river right there, there really was sort of this wonderful revitalization. That and Littleton is the home of Pollyanna, which is a thing that people come for, and it is also where Cheddar's, which is the candy counter I think they still hold the world record for the longest candy counter in the world.
I had no idea.
Yeah, so there's a lot of tourism that comes through for that, but it's also a wonderful community of about 6,000 people. So it's a great sort of hub in that, and it's right. While it is way up there, it's also right on 93, and I think that helps. That helps us be a place that people can stop off and have a great day.
Yeah, I was really shocked. Okay, enough of that part. There's a lot I want to talk to you about since this is the first time meeting you.
Sure.
Can you talk to me a little bit about how you fell in love with theater? Or I don't know if you were an actor yourself. I know you direct up there. And
yes.
So how did that all come about?
Sure.
What's the genesis there?
So I'm from Rhode Island initially, and I grew up, I was very lucky. In my hometown, we had this community chorus, but it was a big community chorus. It was 180 voices, and the Boston Festival Orchestra would come and play. And so I grew up at 7 years old singing Bach and Beethoven and Brahms. And it was this wonderful thing that they did once a year was they would have this medieval pageantry, and it was based on, they do a show called Revels in Cambridge every year, and so they do this medieval pageantry just right after Christmas, and this huge chorus of people and this orchestra would then have an additional 100 people that they would build this large stage in front of what they do. And so I remember being this 7-year-old up there on the riser singing in the chorus and watching all of these amazing paper beasts and paper mache, and we were in this medieval land with giant unicorns, and it gave me this love for performance and the magic of that right away. And so I grew up in that experience and then fell in love with theater more and more in high school and in musicals in that way. And so I went to school for theater. My degree's in theater.
Did?
Yes. And I lived in Los Angeles for a handful of years. I lived in New York City for a handful of years. And I loved what I was doing in those places. But I had been connected to New Hampshire since I was a kid because the same chorus that I mentioned that I grew up in, they had this camp up in northern New Hampshire in the Littleton area where I am that they would send all the kids to for a week of the year at the end of the summer to sort of thank them for working so hard for the year, and they could have sort of a summer camp experience, but also like trap them together in the same place to work on the music for next year. But so it was a great time, and I fell in love with the area from that. And eventually it was the thing that I would do in the summers, that I would come up and be involved in that camp right through my adulthood. And I got to a point where I was looking for an experience outside of the city, and this theater, the Upstage Players in New Hampshire, was an opportunity for me in the off time of the summer season that I was doing to get involved in a theater. And I realized after doing a show and being involved with them for a really short time that I could make a much bigger difference in that area than I was doing small shows in the city, where I very much felt like I was just a cog in the wheel, as opposed to being in a place where I am in New Hampshire, where we can create. And I almost always look for the fixer-upper project.
I see.
Or wait, actually, that's not fair. I don't look for it. It finds me. It finds me really well.
Like the bad penny.
Yeah, and we're a community theater, and I was very lucky growing up. I grew up in the theater and went to school for theater and then worked in professional theater. And because of the summer gig I was doing, I never did the sort of summer stock community theater thing that so many people would do. So I had no experience in what community theater was at all.
What?
Yeah, and I just didn't understand what it was as an animal. And when I stepped in to see what was going on, it didn't take me long going to see things in the area and seeing how things worked to realize that there really are two different kinds of community theater. There's the kind of community theater where people get together and it's like a club and they have a good time and they come when they want to, and if everybody learns their lines and sort of where they might want to stand on stage, they put on that show and they love doing it, and it's a great time and it's a great experience. And then there's the other sort of community theater where the theater's run as though it were professional theater, and the goal is excellence and production quality. There are community theaters across the country that are very tiny, and there are community theaters across the country with multi-million-dollar budgets.
Yeah.
So community theater versus professional theater, I think gets confusing to people, even in our industry, as to where that line falls. And so I met with the people at this theater where I just started working, and I said, I see so much potential here. And at the time, they were a very small group who would meet, the board would meet in someone's living room and talk about what shows they might want to do next year. And
doesn't get much more community than that.
No, not in the slightest, right? And
oh, hang on. What a day for a daydream. You are listening to NH Unscripted. I am your loving spoonful-like host, Ray Dudley. We are coming to you from the never overly ostentatious digs of the WKXL studios in Concord. 1450 AM, 103.9 FM, 101.9 FM for the beautiful souls in Manchester. NHTalkRadio.com is the URL. Andrew Lidestri is here from Theater Up, which is way up in Littleton. And I have a lot more questions for him. As you can imagine, we'll be right back. Hoist up the John B. sails. We are afloat. You are listening to NH Unscripted. I am your Beach Boys-like host, Ray Dudley. We are coming to you from the Hollywood Square-like digs of the WKXL studios. I like the center square personally, but that's just me. 1450 AM, 103.9 FM, and 101.9 FM for the beautiful souls down in Manchester. We love you folks down there. NHTalkRadio.com is our URL. Theater Up is in the house. More specifically, Andrew Lidestri. Thank you. Sorry about that. It's my old man brain firing away there. Andrew, I wanted to say something. I did want to bring up, you briefly touched on it, but the New Hampshire Theater Alliance, you folks scored gold. Is that true?
we did.
Let me quote, 16 nominations, 9 top threes, 5 awards.
Yeah. Yeah, it was an amazing, amazing experience for us. In the time that I've been involved with our theater, there's one other award. We went down one season, and we'd hit a few top threes, and we'd had a few nominations here and there. But we never expected that we would come in the room and go up on stage so many times for the evening. And if I'm being really honest, I didn't even prepare anything to say, and was so embarrassed. The first award that I went up and had to speak to, I was just very honest and clear and said, "Look, I never thought I'd be up here, and thank you so much." But it was wonderful, and our name kept coming up, and it was a great experience.
Well, apparently something's going on up there. I mean, 9 top threes is darn impressive.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. You were talking a little bit about the shows and the past shows like The Lion King.
Yeah. We've had a great season. We started this year with La Cage aux Folles, which was a great experience for us to be able to bring a play about gay rights and gay awareness to our area. And it was really well received, and it was our first show ever to sell out. So to be able to be in that position with a show that had some... I was surprised that people felt that there were controversial elements in it. I don't come from a place in my mind or in my world where those topics feel as controversial anymore. Yeah. But there was a little of that in our area. And so it was great, the amount of community support.
Sold out it says it all.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And so and I think it also brought a wonderful new segment in terms of our demographic of people who specifically came out to support us through that.
Got you.
Who then, I hope, and we literally went, the president of our organization, Courtney Vashaw, and I, we went out on stage after the show every night and thanked people for coming. And, we said exactly that. We said, it's so heartwarming to have people come in to support us for this very specific reason. And that the best way they can support it and what we hope we can provide them is the opportunity to come back and see other kinds of theater. And so we hope that we've used that to help grow our family.
Smart.
Yeah, so we did that, and we did Blithe Spirit, which is a Noel Coward comedy this winter. And then we've just opened our youth program this year, and so we did Lion King Jr. in the spring. That just closed 3 weeks ago. And so we cast 50 kids in that show and made so many crazy masks and costumes, and it was wonderful. That show, we usually do 2 weekends of a performance, but this was a singular weekend, and that sold out almost 3 weeks before we opened.
Why did it take so long for you to have a youth program like that?
So we are on a very specific trajectory. We're trying very hard to, it's important to me, ever since I've become the artistic director of this organization, to build something that doesn't just affect our area now, but can outlive us. Mm-hmm. And so we've been very careful to try to set ourselves up the right way, and we've done some strategic planning, and we've done a lot of board mission and vision work. And so we're on a long-term plan that involves taking our community theater. We've just opened our youth branch this year, and then I'm hoping 3 or 4 years down the road we'll actually also have a professional segment, because we hope to, I was saying to you earlier, we just got our first brick and mortar space this year. We've been performing for years in the Littleton Opera House, which is a town building, and we wanted to have a building we felt we had a little more control over and could make the space work. And so we've just acquired what used to be the old Masonic Temple downtown. And so that is going to be a space where we hope to not only perform and rehearse, but we're hoping to open a whole school, a whole educational program. So,
wow.
Yeah. So not only the community theater, but the youth program and the professional branch, the intent is to get to a point where we can hire in people who work all over the country in theater for a season as guest artists to teach in the educational program. And then while they're there, be able to perform so that our community theater actors get the opportunity to work with people at that level.
That's a pretty aggressive schedule.
It is. I do tend to work that way. We push our folks, and everybody has been so fantastic. And we have grown. You know, sometimes when an organization grows quickly, it feels like you're growing faster than you can necessarily keep up with. So there's growing pains that any organization has. But 10 years ago when I got here, they were doing a show every other year, and they had a $3,000 budget. And we now do 4 shows a year, and we have a $300,000 operating budget.
What?
So that level of growth takes some time to adjust to.
Congratulations on that. Yeah, that's envious.
We've been very lucky, and we have some wonderful angel donors. But it was an organization that didn't have things like any sort of annual appeal or things that were put in place to allow people to support the arts in ways that I think often people are trying to find a way to support their community and don't know that there are opportunities there. And so more and more people in our area are starting to help us with that.
You had made an astute, at least in my opinion, observation on the dichotomy of community theater. And I've struggled with that myself, and stupidly, and because if you don't realize that there are two,
right,
it becomes very frustrating on some levels.
Sure, yeah, it's not stupid at all, because I feel like even amongst the theater community, if you asked what the difference was, you would get so many answers. And at the end of the day, the difference between community theater and professional theater, the super basic thing is if you pay your actors, you're a professional theater. And if you don't, you're a community theater. So it all comes down to that hairline piece. But I was saying before, that difference between community theaters that are more just a club and the kind of community theater that is interested in sort of a higher level of production value and education. And for us, there's this piece that you can come to our theater and learn this craft and this skill. Because the soft skills alone for kids, we've had kids in our shows for years. The youth program we opened this year are specifically for full youth programs that are shows that don't have anyone over the age of 18 in them. But the soft skills alone and the confidence that kids get coming in to work with us and the ability to be a public speaker and be on stage, there's so many things that we can do, whether or not kids go on to any sort of interest in theater or performing, that help them in any sort of walk of life and any job they're going to have. I think there's so much that we can offer and provide, and that kind of theater I'm very interested in being involved in and running. And so we've been off and going ever since then, and it's really taken off. So when we had Lion King, it's the first time we've ever stacked 2 shows. So we've been rehearsing curtains and running the Lion King and rehearsing that. And so the very first time we were in our brand new space and doing a rehearsal, we had 40 people rehearsing for curtains, and at the same time we had 50 kids performing in The Lion King, and actors alone. That's almost 100 people for the day that our organization was supporting in our area. And so when you add in all the parents and all of the backstage people, it was probably almost 150 people that day working on theater.
My God.
Which is, for
what
where
a
we are.
logistical nightmare.
Sometimes it does.
I can imagine. I wanted to talk to you on a personal level, kind of ish here,
Sure.
about the mechanics here of some things.
Mm-hmm.
How would you describe yourself as a director? Are you, and nobody really likes to admit they might be a micromanager, but I'm throwing it out there. Are you a micromanager kind of who, specifically what you want to see, how many steps someone should take, turn, speak, hand off the ashtray, whatever? Or are you look, I trust you as an actor. As long as you hit these kind of marks, I'm going to let you fly and do what you want to do.
It's funny how dependent that is on the show that we're doing. And when I pick a season for the year, what it's based on is how broad an experience can I offer our folks. So if we're doing a show that's a musical that has 50 people in it and we have 8 weeks to rehearse it, and it involves 8 dance numbers and no one's a dancer and we have to teach them as we go.
Been in a few of those.
Which is a project. Then, especially with musical theater where the timing is so important, I might spend a lot of time talking about, a specific hand movement and a turn, a quick turn of the foot but I try so hard to never give anyone what we call a line reading. I want people's own creativity to be a part of what that is. So a line reading is if I were to say to them, I'd like you to say it exactly like this, with this inflection in your voice, and I want them to feel like they have the artistic license. And so I just try to lead them there to do it.
Oh, man. Here we go to behave, Mrs. Kensington. You are listening to NH Unscripted. I'm your Austin Powers-like host, Ray Dudley. We are coming to you from the YMCA-like digs of the WKXL studios deep in the bunkers of Concord. Ooh, I can smell the chlorine from here. We come to you 1450 AM, 103.9 FM in Concord, 101.9 FM for the souls in Manchester. And NHTalkRadio.com is our URL. Yes, as always, we're just scratching the surface. Andrew Lidestri is here from Theater Up in Littleton. We're chatting business. We'll be right back. Tambourines and elephants, all playing in the band. Yes, you found NH Unscripted. No, there are no tambourines or elephants in the house. I am your Creedence Clearwater Revival-like host, Ray Dudley. We are coming to you from the Car 54-like digs of the WKXL studios. Yeah, 1450 AM, 103.9 FM. Come on, you know where to find those. You got your radio. Does anybody even listen to radio anymore? Everybody I talk to downloads the MP3. 101.9 FM in Manchester, NHTalkRadio.com is where you'll find this show. There's a button out there where you can stream this show live and basically any show here, as well as find the archives of this show and all of the other great programs here at the studio. Andrew Lidestri is here from Theater Up in Littleton, New Hampshire. Let's talk a little bit about your new show coming up that opens the 10th.
Great, yeah. So we're doing Curtains, which is a Kander and Ebb show. Kander and Ebb wrote shows like Cabaret. And so some very well-known items. And Curtains is a show, I think it was 2008 that it opened on Broadway with David Hyde Pierce, who people mostly, I think, know from Frasier.
Yeah.
And it's sort of a whodunit mystery that lives inside a musical about putting on a musical. So you get this very interesting backstage experience. And right at the beginning of the show, at the end of this number, the leading lady passes away. And we very quickly have the local police show up to investigate. And while it might be a suspension of disbelief moment, the way he chooses to investigate, because there's so many people in the theater and he wants to keep his suspects close, is he quarantines the theater. No one can leave.
I like it.
It's great so it's quite funny. And I mean, talk about earworms. There are so many tunes in this show that just don't leave our heads. It is so catchy and so bouncy, and so fun. And there's a ton of dancing. It's just very high energy and it's very funny.
Is this going to be done in the Opera House?
It is.
It is. Where do you put an orchestra? I saw Blithe Spirit. I cannot imagine putting an orchestra in there.
The stage in that building is really quite small, so we build out the theater. So when I designed the sets for a show like this, because this has 37 cast members, it also has an orchestra of almost 20. Because we do all of our orchestras full out. A lot of people.
You don't use tracks?
No, never. And on top of that, a lot of times you can take the orchestra from a show and really reduce it, so you're just using a piano and a few instruments here or there. But we really try to fill out every piece of what that is. So there's a huge percussion section. There's a bunch of horns and brass, and so what we do is we take out several seats in our balcony, and we split the orchestra to either side, and we build the stage out almost more than the depth of the actual stage itself. We build a big riser out into the room.
Wow.
So the stage really increases in size for a show like this. We just need the dance space. There's tap elements of the show and jazz elements of the show. So it's a lot of fun to watch that come together.
So for people who might want to eventually be in the show up there, I mean, it's a hall, let's admit, but regardless, what kind of a schedule do you have for a show like that? Is it an 8-week, 12-week? I mean, it's community theater, so it's not like you can do it in 4.
Well, so we only perform 2. We perform 2 weekends, and our rehearsal period, it varies. Our winter show is usually the smaller Blithe Spirit that you came to see. It's usually our smallest show in the mix. That I usually rehearse anywhere from 5 to 7 weeks.
Well,
we give them
bad.
to do that. No, it's but that's a tight schedule because we rehearse them 3 days a week. Wednesday, Thursday evenings they come in, Sunday afternoons, and everybody in community theater has a full-time job and a full life, and to then volunteer their time on top of that. So we do spread it out in that way. A musical I try to put in the schedule anywhere from 11 to 13 weeks. Any more than that, I just don't. I'm ready to move on to the next one.
Oh, my God, that's a lifetime. And when you commit to 12 or 13 weeks, that's 3 or 4 months of your life.
It's true. It really is. And I having come from a professional theater background, I know what it is to go in and rehearse a show in 2 weeks and put it up. But when that's your job and you're doing it 9 to 5 every day, you're condensing that rehearsal. Right. And it makes sense.
Yeah, of course.
But one of the things that we really pride ourselves on is we take people from all walks of life. And I pick shows that have very... sometimes very complicated elements, and so I'm always looking for what that educational thing is for us on a yearly basis. When we did Romeo and Juliet, I flew in a sword master because I didn't want to use wooden swords. We used real metal swords. We did a 2-week class in sword fighting.
What? You flew someone in?
Yeah, we did a full 2-week camp of what it is to do actual stage combat, and so we train our people up, and then it's a skill that we have moving forward. And so we had somebody come in and they choreographed all the fights for that particular show. Here with this show, there's so much dancing, and we did 42nd Street a few years ago, and we offered a class 6 months in advance for people who wanted to learn to tap. And we picked up some wonderful dancers who have come back show to show to work with us. So we do have, I would say 2/3 of the cast that we have that dances in this show are people who have danced for years. But these are people who might have danced in their youth, and they're now moms in the community who are excited to come back and haven't been in a dance class in years and years, and then sort of rehone their skills. And then we have other people who
That's
don't
community
dance
right there, right?
It is.
Yeah.
And then we have other folks that don't dance at all, and but might get cast in a dance role, and we train as we go, and we find what looks good on people's bodies. And I'm fully aware that people who come to see our shows don't necessarily want to watch an hour of people who have never danced before dance really hard. So it's
who would have thunk it?
It's finding the right thing to work on everybody and finding the right balance of a show that can have a polished professional look in the time that we have.
your musicians, where are they coming from? Is it like a music school up there somewhere where you bring them in?
So we get them. A lot of music educators in our area come out to do our shows, and our band meets once a week for about 6 weeks to put the orchestra together, and then they come in just for the tech to do that. So there's a lot of local music educators. We do reach out to places like Plymouth, which isn't too far from us, and to look for musicians.
You say that, but I was at Plymouth still thinking, my God, I got another hour to go.
Well, Plymouth's only 40 minutes.
All right.
But no, but it's true. I think when you live up where we are, you get used to this idea that, like, it's no big deal. I've got to drive half an hour to go to the store. I mean, what do you do? So, yeah, I think you get not a skewed, but a different view of distance and time management where we are.
It's all perspective, I guess.
For sure.
So, casting-wise, how are people finding out about your shows, about auditions specifically, and what would they expect? What kind would you be expecting them to be able to sing, or are their sides usually posted somewhere, or are they just going to show up and have to do something cold turkey?
So, as part of our training program, I'm always trying to move people more and more towards what you might expect if you went to a professional audition. And we're actually we're offering 2 classes in the next few months specifically on auditioning and what that process is. And so when we post that we'd like people to come in with a song prepared for musical theater, or if it's a show without music, we ask them to prepare a 1 or 2 minute monologue, knowing full well, and not ever wanting people to find that too daunting, knowing full well that there might be people who come in who don't have anything prepared, and so we've got Happy Birthday ready at the piano.
Thank you.
Thank you. Or that we're going to hand somebody aside or ask them to recite a poem if they come in without, so we try to make it. We try to have it be that people who are ready to be at that next level can have an experience that challenges them, but that it isn't daunting to people who are just starting, because we want people to feel like they can come in and become part of this family and start on this process without feeling like if they don't have previous experience, it isn't attainable for them.
Yeah. You mentioned a couple of times now classes. Can you elaborate a little bit more about that? And because people might think, why would I need a class on auditioning? But there's a skill to it.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think a lot of people, especially if they've never been involved on the backstage side of any sort of performance in any area of the arts, might assume that things are just sort of talent-based and that you're either born with talent or you're not. And talent is something that you could be either born with or not, but it is also a skill,
right?
And a craft. And there are pieces to hone, and whether it's learning to breathe the right way to sustain your voice and project it, or whether it's learning how to communicate the words of a play in a way that will make the audience believe that you are the character that you are trying to portray. The skills specifically are something that for our theater to be able to produce better theater as we go along, and for the people who work with us to feel proud of what they're putting together, that we want to be able to impart. So we have in the last few years been offering several workshops and classes, sort of one-offs here or there, as we've behind the scenes been working on a piece that we'll be releasing next year, which is a full curriculum theater training program. And so we want to be able to offer for people the one-off classes and workshops.
No, you can finish that thought.
But also being able to offer to other people who want to work on a skill and progress a school that they can go through all the steps of and then feel like they've attained something at the end.
As you can imagine, he kicked the door open and I have questions. Yes, I do. We are in a New York state of mind. Welcome to NH Unscripted. We got one more block to go. I am your Billy Joel-like host, Ray Dudley. We are coming to you from the Disneyland-like digs of the WKXL studios in Tonkin. 1450 AM, 103.9 FM, 101.9 FM in Manchester for the beautiful folks. NHTalkRadio.com is the URL. Andrew Lidestri from Theater Up is in the house. We're chatting all the mechanics of theater. We'll be right back. Well, it's not quite me and Julio down by the schoolyard. It's Andrew and Ray, but we are doing NH Unscripted. Break out those radios, folks. Like those transistor radios. Put that earplug in. 1450 AM, 103.9 FM, 101.9 FM for the beautiful people in Manchester. God, we love you down there. NHTalkRadio.com is the URL. And speaking of URLs, Mr. Lidestri, I'm sure you're not surviving up there on your own. Are there other folks involved up there?
We have such a fantastic team.
Pray tell.
We're very lucky to be at the point where we actually have 3 paid staff who work with us, and we have this fantastic team of volunteers beyond that come in. I mean, today alone, here in the middle of the day, on a Friday, when we're taping this, we have people that are we probably have 6 ladies in our costume shop that are retired folks that are delighted to come in, and so there are 687 costume pieces in the show that we've. You
give us retired people Jell-O and applesauce. We're yours. We're easy.
I fill a whole fridge so nobody has to leave. No, and so we've got that piece going today. I've got people in the theater that are there painting set pieces. It happens to be school vacation week right now, so that is
lucky.
A wonderful thing where we've got people. But I think sometimes people don't realize. This show has 37 cast members. There's probably an additional 50 people behind the scenes that are almost all volunteers that come in and offer different levels of expertise. There are a few things that we have to job out where we are. We don't have trained lighting designers and sound engineers, and sometimes we will offer stipends and get some of those people to come in professionally from a city to work with us. And what's great is that then our folks get the chance to work with those people.
Yeah.
So we do have a professional lighting designer who will show up in the last 2 weeks to do this show with us. But what that does is it's such a strange and wonderful melting pot between professionals who've come in to offer their design expertise and a few paid staff members and these volunteers that come in and get excited about what they're doing. And it really does. We're a theater family. And I think a lot of people would talk about that sort of thing, especially in an arts organization. I think sometimes that gets looked at as cliche, this idea of a family. But you spend a lot of time together, and there's a lot of emotion that runs high on a stage. And so I think family is really the only word that makes sense.
Gosh, my friend, you are stealing my thunder for what I was going to... I'm coming back to it. I do want to give you a chance. Please give the URL for what's happening up there.
Sure. We're theaterupnh.org is where we can be found. We have a pretty good presence across all sorts of social media channels. Our Facebook is quite active. We are on TikTok. We are on Insta. And so people can find us in all of those places. And it gives all sorts of information, and whether it's tickets or classes or opportunities for people. So theaterupnh.org.
I'm going to ask you towards the end to squeeze that in again.
Thank you.
However, I did want to make it a point. I did go out to your website, and you mentioned the family moniker, but I was watching a video out there of people who have been in past shows, and they, to a person, mentioned how family it felt to them, how much they loved. And I know you're right, it can be very cliche, but a lot of these people do find connection there. They find friends, eventual partners in some cases.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they love it. They speak so respectfully of your theater and so lovingly of it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to reiterate the sense I got just from that short little video of really the community aspect of it. It's not a denigrating moniker to put on things. I really did get the feeling from those. It was so heartfelt to watch these people smiling, bragging about what they had been in, the friends they had been making, how welcome they felt up there. Kudos to you folks.
Thanks. Yeah, no, it's. I was saying to you earlier that having learned community theater at this point in my life, having stepped right into professional theater after college, that's really it's a piece that I hadn't thought of. This community.
Yeah, I'm with you. I get it
because you have to think about how much of our team is a volunteer.
Yeah.
And then so the question becomes, what is it that people are looking for where they come out to do this? And whether it's that they're looking for a social experience or a creative outlet, whatever those elements are, these are people that are looking for something as an experience in their life. And that, I think, it makes them more open to a situation that will feel like family because they're choosing to spend their free time.
Yeah.
It isn't that these are all people that are coming to get a paycheck and that it's just their job and they go home. And so when you put people in the same room that are all coming for that reason, I think then it makes absolute and total sense. And I don't know why I hadn't thought of it earlier, that then of course you are developing some sort of family. These are people who have volunteered and chosen this is the thing they want to do beyond the time that they've got to work and deal with their own issues in their life. And so they've carved this out, and family really develops quite quickly from that.
When I went up to Blythe Spirit, the experience I had was remarkable. I walked in, I'll bet I was warmly greeted by, 5 different people along the way. And you sit in it's fold-up chairs. I mean, that's nothing. But I mean, it has this atmosphere to it where the town has gotten together for this spectacle. It's like a carnival comes in or whatever. And I don't mean a carnival in that way. And, that's not a negative thing. You walk out at intermission, and they're eagerly selling you snacks and cookies, and they almost want to give you a hug and embrace you, even if you don't buy something. There's that. It was like the town turned out for an event.
Yeah, I think it was 2012 that I started working. So 12 years now I've been in this area doing what I'm doing. And for the first 5 or 6 years, the amount of people who would say to me, "What do you mean there's a theater in this town?" And so after a while you start thinking to yourself, how do we get that piece of, change is not something that necessarily comes easy, and the more
one pebble at a time,
more rural the area you're in, I think sometimes as well, right?
Yeah.
But I think we then very much turned a corner, and it is a thing that people in our community and our town really look forward to come out in that way. I think across our industry, things like season tickets or flex passes where you buy a ticket for everything that someone does for a season, a lot of theaters find that's dying off, that everyone waits to the last minute and someone will go get a ticket for something. We have found the opposite, that we are having this great influx of people that are saying to us, I don't care what your shows are next season, we're definitely coming. And then they'll buy a season ticket or a flex pass. And so it's great to know that more and more the people in our community are saying that the arts piece that you're doing is important enough that it isn't just about the one show you're doing or whatever that experience might be. Whatever you're going to put on, we're delighted to come and see.
Yeah, it showed. I mean, when I went that afternoon, the crosswalks were full of people. They're chatting it up. It was like this afternoon thing. People are bringing flowers, of course, the typical thing. Right. But it was like the town turned out for this thing. Yeah. And you're not doing it like in a corner in some kind of a little shop in a basement somewhere. The whole town was turning out to embrace this thing that had been happening. I was not a big fan of Noel Coward's Blythe Spirit, not because of the cast, I will say.
Right.
The play for me just it didn't do much for me.
It's an older comedy for sure.
Dude, you are exactly right on right there. It's funny. I don't know the name of the gentleman who played the lead. Mm-hmm. He walks out and the audience just burst out in applause for him. He actually had to wait 15, 20 seconds for it to die down. I don't know what his name is, but
Charles LaFond, he did great at that character. And I try to always pick plays that I feel some sort of connection with. I won't pick a play where I can't obviously boil down what feels like this is the reason to do this now. This is the message for people in our area. This is why this is current today. And I do think that a play like Blythe Spirit, which Noel Coward really wrote at the during the Second World War because he wanted something for people to feel like they could go out and laugh and not just believe everything was terrible around them. And we always need something like that.
Yeah.
But when I pick a show like that now that's older, that's about not only for our cast but for our community, sort of providing this well-rounded theater experience of what those classics are. And those, we did Shakespeare last year, and mixed in with some brand during the pandemic. We did an outside performance of Green Day's American Idiot. So we really try to run the gamut of what those different things are and be able to say to people, there's all different kinds of theater. And so this might not necessarily speak to you, but maybe this will, and come and find that out.
That's a good segue. Do you have your shows picked for next year?
No, we're still in the process of that. We have a few things that we've released. In the fall, we'll be doing Fiddler on the Roof.
Classic.
Oh, I'm so excited about it. I really wanted to do it coming back from the pandemic. But we're doing that, and then the kids are doing Finding Nemo in the spring.
Excellent. URL, please, sir.
theaterupnh.org. Please find us there.
Andrew Lidestri from Theater Up in Littleton. Thank you, sir, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, my gosh. We were in a New York state of mind. NH Unscripted. We love our listeners. 1450 AM, 103.9 FM, Concord, 101.9 FM in Manchester. NHTalkRadio.com is the URL. I'll catch you on the next one. Love our job.